Hi, welcome to another edition of Simply Stated. This is a special episode on the publication Playboy. I'm going to go through a few historical events and also my experience working with them recently, and playing a little bit of classical background music today, so hopefully that won't be interrupted. I'm going to grab a remote just in case anything happens. Normally I wouldn't make 2 Simply Stated shows in a week, being that it is a less popular series on the channel, but I had enough material this week to decide to put this together for you. And what I want to go through is that I started working again for Playboy back in late November, and I was working on Playboy Digital and became a bunny really fast. And then there were problems with customer service, couldn't get through on the phone lines, can't get messages through at all to the offices, and this all started after the Los Angeles fires. So I looked it up, and the Los Angeles Fire Department said that the Playboy Digital offices were hit by the fires and supposedly destroyed. All I know is that I can't reach anyone there, that I've got a bunch of weird phished messages back, and that the entire operation seems to have been messed up by ransomware. If you were to go to their website, everything looks totally bizarre. All the images are bizarrely, I don't know how to describe it, everything is weird. If you were to go look at what's supposed to be models on our page, it's just not going to look right. It's not going to look like anything Playboy's ever put out or was putting out before. And I've noticed that for the last couple weeks. I have money tied up in accounts actually that I had made there that I can't withdraw, and bizarrely like half the app slash website works for content creators, for the actual creators, but otherwise it just isn't fully functional. And I've even contacted like the main offices of Playboy outside of Los Angeles. I'm still waiting to hear back from them, but if any of you want to be a supporter of me, please feel free to contact the actual Playboy corporate and tell them that this Playboy creator can't actually get through to her page and use it, and that creators are actually unable to withdraw money or make posts or do anything with their pages right now. And it appears that they've been taken over by a ransomware group out in Los Angeles, an act of looting, terrorism, fraud after the fires. Additionally, I would note that there was a ransomware bug going around Europe back in the fall called Playboy. So this must have been planned out as a part of the fires. I don't have the full story answers yet as to what happened. I'm still waiting for answers myself. I finally got ahead. I also contacted DHS about all of it, and I've made other contacts. I mean, I even went to people at like Microsoft. So there's something wrong with Playboy Digital. It looks like it's been taken over by some bizarre ransom group, and apparently that's what it is. When you get bizarre phished messages all of a sudden coming back from what's supposed to be customer service that don't make any sense and are just totally irrational and weird, and there's been, there's an actual record of a fire, that's what you're dealing with. It's that some bizarre group has taken over, gang has taken over their offices. So sometimes it's very subtle. I've seen it in the past. Playboy went through, in the days of Hugh Hefner, frankly, experiences with groups trying to take over their offices, literally just coming in and placing an attack and then trying to seize their equipment. And they managed to steer through it pretty successfully under Hef, but we'll see how this turns out. I'm not planning to go anywhere. I'm just going to keep my account until they actually get things fixed, because I'm sure sooner or later a company that big, because they have a very, very large company over them now. They have they have an investment group and another large company involved. I'm sure sooner or later they'll get things straightened out. But if any of you were actually following Playboy and thought it looked really weird lately, that's why. Yeah, that's why the pages look really strange. So, because there's content going up, but it's not normal content at all. Anyways, I just want to go through a history though. This may actually end up solving some of the answers here. As some of you know from the docu-series, I went through a number of investigations when I was living in the DC area, and a lot of it was related to the terrorist groups were tied up with the Russian FSB at Luther College in Iowa, trafficking I had gone through, and then the trafficking I went through subsequently even in the Washington DC area afterwards. And some of it had to do with people that are represent or quote unquote represent SCA or Endeavor, but the group was entirely Russian FSB and tied in with Endeavor and their founders. And I specifically want to go through the story of Holly Madison, who was supposed to be a Playboy bunny. She actually went to Luther College, and bizarrely, she actually went by the name Jamie Rasmussen as the school. I waited a long time to do this show. She was one of the people from the school that was very good at kind of flying undercover. She wasn't as overtly demanding as some of the other women. She's not a J-Lo type that comes in and like screams at people and makes demands. But she's nevertheless a fairly mean, bizarre person. And a sociopath. She ended up, even before I graduated, told me, like, she had some kind of weird setup with the woman that went by the name Kim from the Alpha Beta Psi sorority. It was very weird. That was overtly talking about just trafficking everyone she could find from the school. And eventually ended up getting her own series that she didn't actually write and took credit for. So, for some reason, the Russian FSB decided to install Jamie Rasmussen, who was Holly Madison, in with Hugh Hefner. And she basically took advantage of Hugh Hefner in his later years, claimed to be, wanted to be married to him, talked about having a kid with him. The truth is, she married another man in the fall of 2005 that I had known about for my days at Luther College. She actually invited me to the wedding. I attended it with another man who today only rises to the level of being called a boyfriend, but he also was willing to testify in the Washington, D.C. area to what she was doing to Hugh Hefner. So the truth is, she married another man in Wisconsin in 2005 in the Milwaukee area, and she was married in the ELCA Lutheran Church, and I have no idea if there was an actual contractual government agreement for the marriage. I only know that she literally did a church-based wedding in the ELCA. This is a large part of, I talked to you about the corruption, what were supposed to be different Christian church groups. So her father was supposedly a pastor there. And I've covered some of this in the past, but I just want to review it with recent events. So she was in The Girls Next Door from 2005 around to 2011. And it turned out to be a really serious issue. The federal government came to me and said, this guy is clearly being held hostage in some way by this woman and can't get rid of her. She was one of Buffalo Bill's people from the school. And she was refusing to leave his life, even as he was heading towards what was really the last years of his life. She sucked a lot of money out of Playboy, and frankly, I don't understand the correlation, but she demanded that I agree that she could work for Playboy before I left the school. And I'm not her manager, and I don't work for her. So none of this ever made sense to anyone, actually. Even some of the people who were in the Russian FSB that he's here, they said it doesn't make sense that you have to make decisions for these people, or what you would say would go or matter. Like, why would you manage their careers when you don't work for the company and have a contract with them and don't even like them? Thank you for that. So there's weird paranoia sort of that came out of the school and the Russian FSB of wanting to say that I manage people's relationships. It played out even with some of the women that I dealt with at the Arlington County who planned the attack on the U.S. Capitol. They kept demanding that I make decisions for people in the industry. The only thing anyone could tie to is that I potentially, because I am a U.S. citizen and was at the time as well, family goes back generations here in the U.S., that the Russian FSB has literally been trafficking and using U.S. citizens to do what's called intellectual property work. It doesn't make sense, and it has no basis in reality, so I wouldn't even pay attention to it or ever take it as real. But maybe you would have to have gone through my experiences and been me and develop the relationships I developed with lawyers at the Department of Labor or the U.S. military or even just policy analysts to make any sense out of it. But it showed that there was some mental illness with her, too. And there was no reason to threaten me and demand that she be allowed to work at Playboy because I had been a bunny in my late teens. Like, at age 18, 19, I was a bunny. It doesn't make any sense. And it asked if she could have my money. Can't imagine she'd be crazy enough to try to take money off an app today from me, but she still supposedly lives in Wisconsin. So, she was about blackmail, manipulation, or lying about her own situation is the point. And so it was my testimony and then that of an ex-boyfriend who was not a good man at all, but he ended up reporting her, and people took it more seriously, trying to get Hugh Hefner some help. The show finally got canceled, and they were able to actually get her out of his life, so he could actually enjoy the final years of his, what should have been his retirement. I mean, let me look at this here. So he died in, I just want to get the right date for when he finally passed away, because this is actually kind of a sad story. He spent the final years of his life living with his wife on the property. She had moved out. His first wife moved out. She had a home on it. And basically, he has an adult son. But as far as, I don't think I could imagine a more scary story. I mean, he died on September 27, 2017, so it was up until the last 6 years of his life that this was going on. That he was going through some kind of bizarre scheme with her. She messed up the publication on purpose. She was roommates with another woman called Colleen Bubb, who today you know is Blake Lively. I'm not even going to try to address the whole Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni argument. It's obviously about funneling money around. If Justin Baldoni has anything serious to say, then he needs to file actual criminal charges against Blake Lively and not play the money game. And frankly, the same thing with Blake Lively. If she has a real issue with Justin Baldoni isn't just trying to funnel money around, then she needs to go ahead and file criminal charges. But what I will say about some of this is the reason I finally decided to do the show is that, Colleen is actually the owner of Famous Dave's as well. It's important to know that there were a number of women from the school that have been outed and even put down in the media. Holly Madison / Jamie has been able to keep herself in the good girl position. But then if you were to look at pictures of her, and you could Google it today, the pictures of her next to their bunnies look completely bizarre. She's flat-chested, doesn't have the right face shape or even type that they use for Playboy in any era. And not someone that most people would actually enjoy being around. Like, she didn't have the Playboy bunny, nice, polite, considerate vibe. There were a number of things she said that happened when I was at school that I had to take apart during the course of the investigations that went on for 19 years in Washington, D.C. area. One of them was that she was friends with a man who identified as a woman on the second floor of Olson in 1998 to 1999, that school year at Luther. And a person that I think we just decided to nickname her Ross. Big fan of G.W. Bush, very extreme, not really supportive to rape victims of children who've been abused. Really strange. And Jamie took her to track and had her compete as a woman, even though she was actually a biological male and a fairly large one. Like, really, really big. And then her other roommate was a woman that went by the name Bridget, who also ended up not coming out looking very well in the investigations. That was the other extreme of being supposedly super conservative. So she had these two roommates that were supposedly different extremes politically, and there she was trying to pretend to be like she was a good girl. And most people really didn't pick up on it, except that the dynamic was just kind of odd. I actually stayed away from her most of the time at school, but she was someone who would show up from time to time, seeming nice, but then at the end, like a whole other list of people just turned out to be completely crazy and greedy. She was friends with the Swiss Miss, who's an identified serial killer up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., where I went to school. They lived across the hall from each other. And there was an incident during the fall of my first year at the school where a woman on the floor, who was a black woman, got upset and ended up running down the hall, and so the hall right by Jamie's room ended up getting cut. And it took that woman a really long time to tell anybody what had happened to her. She finally told me that she was convinced that Jamie had cut her, and she didn't feel comfortable saying anything about it. She actually left the school my sophomore year. She was from St. Louis, had waited up in the middle of the night to meet me at the airport when I was coming back from Ireland, talking to me about everything, and then went home, never returned to college again. She was one of the few people I know successfully left the school. And I know she's still alive today, but she was a good friend. It was hard for me to see her leave, but the idea that somebody would go to the extreme of cutting her because she didn't support the Russian FSB is ultimately what it turned out to be. So, and some people call it an outright murder attempt. FYI. And I also have one more comment to add, which is that, and this is the only thing about her that ever stuck out to me. You think some people have like the girl vibe going, and then they make some comment finally where you go, hey, this person's like really messed up. She said that she complained a lot to her mom about the fact that she had small breasts. And her mom had said, well, anything more than a handful is going to turn most men off. And I took this conversation repeatedly through like investigation after investigation, and everyone said that's a huge indicator that she was completely psycho. Normal, healthy women don't talk that way. And they don't stare obsessively at other women and their bodies like that. And if you were to look at Holly, I mean, she's very clearly photoshopped. She was someone who was like maybe an A or B. Clearly took bizarre pictures of other women at the school, finally turned out for her, whatever it was she's doing. So basically, she undermined the integrity of Playboy on top of undermining their actual operations and financial operations. Frankly, after Hef's money in his old age, it's just horrible. But, the good news is that Hef was able to get out of that and get her out of his life. So that's the positive there. But that's only because there were people, myself included, in the Washington, D.C. area who went to the U.S. government and said, hey, This has to stop. I do want to note that it was decided she was either Russian or Iranian, possibly both, because there was a number of other people at the school that were very distinctly Iranian. I told you the story about the two other women, one of whom she was very close with. One went by the name Kim, the other went by the name Becky. Becky, her mom had literally pictures on the front of the New York Times, posted of herself like working at a McDonald's in Moscow. So it was that messed up a school. If you put any of this in the context of modern politics, this is some of why the Department of Education is in trouble today. Because of this should be going on in a school here in the U.S. So, and should have been able to be set up at a school here in the U.S. Like, there's no place for a labor camp in the United States of America for Russia, China, Iran. Especially not to set up like labor trafficking and abuse of kids. So, and what's even going to happen with Endeavor, I wouldn't even know. I know some of you, I know there's people around here that are kind of anxious to know, and the reality is I'm not the great Zoltar. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I don't know. I only know what the U.S. military said about it. So, if you're looking for a name of somebody whose account has become completely bizarre at Playboy, their head of customer services, a man is supposed to be named Julio Santos, but I don't believe any of the messages I received actually came from him because they're all fished and look completely bizarre. And I cannot imagine anybody who actually worked in customer service or received that kind of position would actually write those kinds of messages. They're completely strange harassment. In other words, the bunnies today, the bunny creators at Playboy are being harassed as a result of the Los Angeles fires. I'd love some help with getting that all straightened out since I currently have money tied up in the situation currently. And I hope you were all doing well and have a lovely day. And this has been another special edition of Simply Stated on Playboy. Thank you.